Okay, so 5 years they start the Medicaid planning process,
Right.
or that's the look back period.
Right.
So talk us through that. Like, what would you like to see?
Well, let me just talk a little bit. So I was talking a minute ago about what the eligibility criteria is for a single person, and where it becomes a little more complicated, and for a lot of reasons, is when there's a married couple and one couple needs long-term care and the other one doesn't. So that does present some opportunities for planning. First of all, there's always this concern that the spouse who doesn't need long-term care is going to be left with nothing. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case. So those eligibility limits, that $8,000.
That's a very real fear.
Right. So when there's a married couple and one of them needs long-term care and the other does not, it's a different criteria. The person who does it, they're going to take their total assets, and the person who's not going into a facility or doesn't need long-term care is going to be allowed to keep half of those assets up to a threshold. This year it's about $125,000. Okay. So they're not completely, they're not expected to spend every last penny and be impoverished. On top of that, the spouse who doesn't need long-term care, their retirement assets are completely exempt.
Okay.
So they get to keep those, and any income they're receiving, Social Security, even if they're still working,
okay,
their income stays with them, because the state realizes we can't have one spouse going into a nursing home or getting Medicaid at home. Well, the other spouse is living in the community. They still have to pay taxes. They still have to, pay homeowners insurance and buy food and all that. So there's a recognition and there's a formula for that. And so that is important that people know what the rules are as they apply to them, so they don't spend more money than they need to, that they know they apply for Medicaid when their assets meet the criteria and don't keep paying privately beyond when they could actually get some assistance. There's also some ways to, because there's not a gifting penalty, when one spouse gives another spouse, transfers an asset to another spouse, there's some opportunities to take excess assets, and there's certain kind of annuities, again, I won't get into the weeds on that, that provide income for the spouse that's not getting long-term care, and then get the asset level reduced on the other side for the person who needs care, and can get them eligible sooner and preserve even additional income, which is exempt, for the person not needing care. So there are some things that people can do in that situation. But again, the most important thing is to know what the rules are as they apply to them, so that they don't pay privately or spend, that they seek assistance at the time when they're eligible, not beyond, and spend more assets than they needed to. And also on the other end, that they don't do things and make transfers or make choices that have other kinds of implications that could cause a Medicaid penalty, or that have other tax implications. I mean, people get very obsessed with saving their assets for Medicaid, and they don't think about how other types of capital gains tax and other types of things are implicated when they make.
Do you work closely with an accountant to talk through all those ramifications?
Yeah, we do. If people don't have their own accountant, and I've often, say, you got to talk to them. I know I'm not an accountant, I'm not a tax attorney. I know the basics of capital gains tax and how step up in basis and all that kind of stuff works. But we have, if they don't have an accountant of their own, we have several we can refer people to, so that we aren't doing one thing over here that causes a bigger financial or some other kind of detriment on the other side. Got to have both hands working.
Now this is not like a shameless marketing plug. You didn't ask me to say this, but I can see where, like you said, overspending and getting rid of some assets to meet this imaginary deadline. And we're going to talk about myths, but the cost of paying for an elder care attorney to help you plan this out, and an accountant, probably is a drop in the bucket compared to the damage you can do without it. I mean,
depending. Again, if people are nearing the Medicaid level, it's not like they have, tons of money, or we would just say, well, you don't even need to look at this. You're so far away from being eligible, don't worry about it. Get good care with the resources you have, get the best care you can at home, or find the nicest facility you can find. You have to weigh that out.
Especially in the married situation where you can protect some of your assets through some strategic moves.
Right.
That you might not think of on your own.
Right. And on the other side, we don't want people to get so obsessed with, protecting things for Medicaid that they incur, for example, some massive, or their estate would incur some big capital gains hit on the other side because they gave an asset away instead of letting someone inherit it. I mean, you have to present all the implications and ramifications, and then, people have to make a decision based on their priorities and their objectives. What's your goal, and then, but the most important thing is that they have good information, and we're a resource to them to make sure they understand how all this works, because they hear so many different things about, the state taking your house, or you should hide money in the bed and all this kind of stuff. And so we're just really trying to unravel that for people and clear up any myths and give them good information so they can make a good decision.